Have you ever paused to consider how people managed to keep food from spoiling before the age of electricity? In the medieval world, when leftovers couldn't just be tucked away in a refrigerator, nor could you call for delivery when cupboards ran dry, resourcefulness became a way of life. The creativity they brought to the challenge was both ingenious and, at times, utterly strange, sometimes even comical. Nowhere was this inventive spirit more alive than within the kitchens of the Middle Ages. Far from being spotless, sterile spaces, these hubs were bustling and rough, adorned with suspended meat, herbs drying in every corner, and salty aromas thick in the air. Imagine a place with more salt in storage than a ship ready for a long voyage. The kitchen, always hazy with wood smoke and alive with a tapestry of scents, was the living core of every home. Here, families stockpiled essentials: salted meats, strings of dried vegetables, loaves of dense bread. Modern conveniences were unimaginable, a world where ketchup would be as mystifying as alchemy. When spring returned, food preservation began in earnest, for the looming cold made survival uncertain, and running to the nearest tavern for a hearty meal was never an option. Let me ask you, where are you right now as you listen to this story? What hour of the day is it in your part of the world? Let us know in the comments below. Each time and place enriches our community, weaving new threads into the tapestry of those who share this journey with us. The story of preservation starts with salt. Sounds simple, but its value was immense. So much so that in ancient Rome, soldiers sometimes received their wages in salt, which gifted us the very word salary. In the medieval era, merchants from Venice built their empires by cornering the salt market, the titans of their time. Only instead of trading technology, they dealt in precious, glimmering grains. To preserve meat or fish, they'd press layers upon layers of salt, sometimes as much as a fifth of the total weight, until the food shriveled, becoming a withered, resilient version of itself. Think of everything transformed into a medieval precursor to jerky. A 13th century recipe once advised to blanket the flesh so thickly with salt that it dazzles like fresh snowfall. The method applied to fish, pork, even vegetables. Cabbages salted and left to ferment became the first sauerkraut. Authorities back then believed all this salt was healthy. Today's doctors would surely disagree, but times were different. Yet salt's cost could be daunting. In some villages, a season's worth might mean trading away flocks or a week's wages. In scarcity, households became smokehouses, filling the air with thick smoke until every corner reeked of fire-cured meat. These kitchens had no fancy hoods or chimneys, and so, to smell like smoked pork was simply the scent of life. Preservation by smoke was a subtle craft. Meats and fish hung near the ceiling or in smoky chimneys, where wood smoke from oak, apple, or cherry infused them with its strength and character. Medieval texts spoke in detail about the nuances. Oak reserved for beef, apple for pork, cherry for bird. In one ancient smokehouse unearthed in London, beams are still darkened and aromatic centuries later. Smoke didn't just ward off hunger. It formed an invisible guard against insects and rot, encasing food in a protective veil. Even cheese benefited, giving rise to legendary varieties whose origins trace back to these smoky ages. Some households even smoked eggs, an oddity that no chicken could have foreseen. The wealthiest estates built dedicated smokehouses, multi-level dens where the highest racks dried delicate fish, the lower ones bulkier cattle or pig. Picture, if you will, an ancient parking tower, but instead of chariots, tiers of meats sizzled in the haze. Still, not every problem could be solved with smoke and salt. Enter winter's cold, a cruel but useful ally. Deep, Stone-lined cellars beneath the earth were the medieval equivalent of iceboxes, but nobles with ample means took preservation to dramatic lengths. Specially built ice houses, immense, insulated vaults sunk into the soil, could store mountainous piles of snow and ice, hauled from afar and packed with sawdust for miraculous longevity. Some ice endured for years, overseen by specialists whose sole calling was to keep the hoard from melting away. For ordinary folk, nature sufficed. The steady chill of a cave or stone basement kept cheese, eggs, and root crops edible for weeks or longer. Monks, ever attentive, constructed underground storage to shelter their precious brews and barrels of wine, knowing that coolness was as vital as faith. At winter's peak, parties became peculiar affairs, with slabs of fish or barrels of drink nestled in snow to keep them fresh. Hosts would instruct, bring not just meat and mead, but enough snow to keep it all from spoiling. Some feasts even featured frozen delicacies, medieval snow cones infused with honey or berries. And yes, humorous notes warning revelers of the dangers of yellow snow have survived the centuries. Humanity's humor, it seems, is as enduring as our appetite. Yet winter always recedes, and with the thaw comes the need for other methods. That's when drying took center stage, an art form pursued with tenacity. Everything that could be preserved by air and sun was strung up on rafters or laid across screens. Meats became strips of chewy jerky, grapes shriveled to raisins, plums darkened into prunes. The houses, decked high with garlands of food, must have resembled perpetual festivals. In France, vast towers, known as fruit castles, were built with wooden slats for ventilation, capable of curing thousands of pounds of fruit at a time. Remnants of their bounty, fossilized in dusty corners, provide a tangible link to the past. Each food demanded care. Herbs bundled and inverted, meat sliced gossamer thin, fish flattened like parchment and dried until nearly indestructible. Dried foods grew feather light, a whole ox reduced to the burden of a satchel, perfect for armies and wanderers. Officials held the unimposing yet essential title, Keeper of the Dry Supplies, a reminder that survival demanded both brawn and endless vigilance. But sometimes, even the driest fare wasn't enough, especially in humid climates. That's when people turned to their clandestine champion, vinegar. Across medieval Europe, the work of preserving by fermentation took on a life of its own. Barrels bubbled with pickles, kraut, and all manner of preserved vegetables and fish. One cutting remark from a German cook noted that fish should be left in vinegar until it ceases to resemble the sea and starts to recall sorrow. Fermentation, as we now know, is both art and science, allowing good microbes to outcompete the harmful, transforming perishables into storied food that could outlast winter itself. Sauerkraut kept scurvy at bay, long before science named the disease. Laboratories of fermentation thrived in monasteries. Monks tallied barrels of pickled eggs, and sometimes penned poems extolling the virtues of pickling turnips. The Vikings, bold as ever, experimented bizarrely, crafting lutefisk by bathing fish in lye until it lost all trace of its origins. Archaeological finds have turned up barrels of ancient fish goo, undisturbed for centuries, a testament to human inventiveness, if not our taste for adventure. Remarkably, fermented goods often improved with age and were cherished heirlooms, passed from one generation to another. In one English castle, a barrel of pickled cabbage was tended for over 40 years, a living symbol of continuity and thrift. Even medieval medicine helves overflowed with fermented remedies: cabbage juice for headaches, pickled radish for an unsettled stomach. Because when your tools are limited, every malady resembles a pickling opportunity. For treasures truly precious, there was one final golden answer: honey. Unlike any other food, honey resists time. 3,000-year-old jars, unearthed from the sands of Egypt, were found still edible. Medieval people worshipped this quality and swathed fruit, fowl, and even entire birds in thick layers of honey to make them last. Not only food, but medicine was preserved this way. Wounds slathered in honey, illnesses assuaged by its sweetness. Esteemed beekeepers commanded more pay than cooks. Their art was seen as vital, their lives protected by law. The grandest households kept entire honey rooms as sticky sanctuaries. It is said that walls were so thick with dripped honey and trapped insects that each spring, the cleaning became an epic task. Preserved fruits drenched in honey were must-have centerpieces at noble feasts, a sweet status symbol to flaunt refinement and wealth. And to ensure their honey's purity, people devised quirky rituals, dropping feathers to see if they floated just so, confident that only honey blessed by sacred bees deserved the honor of food preservation. Yet amid all this, some sought to combine necessity with merriment. Alcohol emerged as a dual-purpose savior, preserving fare while elevating the mood. Soaking fruit or even eggs in wine or ale rendered them safe, and sometimes more delicious, across months. Medieval cellars stockpiled barrels not just for drinking, but for keeping cherries, peaches, and even strips of meat submerged in fermenting wine. Monks, ever the innovators, wrote verses about wine-soaked plums. Nobles layered fruits in alternating shades of red and white, creating beautiful, striped displays worthy of admiration, and perhaps envy. Preservation wine often cost more than the meat itself, but it was a price paid gladly to keep hunger at bay with a hint of luxury. Eventually, some discovered that stronger spirits did an even better job. Soon, experiments in distillation became a serious, if sometimes less than sober, business. And so, from the granules of salt to the intoxicating embrace of spirits, the people of the Middle Ages mastered an array of inventive preservation techniques. Each one carried with it a story of patience, resilience, and occasional whimsy. So when you next reach for your refrigerator door, remember these ancestral innovators, who, through trial and taste, kept families alive through hardship after hardship. If you found these tales stirring, we invite you to become a part of our story. Please share your thoughts below, your time and place of listening, your favorite preservation method, or a memory sparked by the past. Join our circle. Subscribe, leave a comment, and help this community keep the ancient flame of curiosity alive. Your voice matters here, now as ever.